Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why Jesus chose to teach through parables? Why, in front of crowds hungry for answers, did he opt for metaphors, symbolic stories, and almost poetic images? The traditional theological explanation asserts that he used parables to facilitate understanding so that everyone, even the humblest, could reach the kingdom of heaven. But what if the real reason was the opposite? What if, in fact, Jesus used parables not to reveal, but to hide? Hide what exactly? Wisdom so profound that it could only be understood by those who already carried the internal code to decipher them, the initiated. And this code, perhaps, was written not in books, but in the sky. Since time immemorial, humans have looked to the stars in search of answers. The observation of the heavens predates any holy scripture. Entire civilizations, such as the Babylonians, Egyptians, and Hebrews, used the stars as guides for agriculture, spirituality, medicine, and social behavior. The idea that the heavens speak to us is not modern, it's ancient. And when Jesus appears in a time when this knowledge still pulsed, he seems to be part of a lineage of masters who understood the sky as a divine language. If this is true, then the parables would be much more than moral teachings. They would be star codes hidden in plain sight. Look closely at the Gospels. The parable of the sower, the good shepherd, the wheat and the tares, the wise and foolish virgins. All of them are laden with agricultural symbols, cycles, lights and shadows, natural elements that follow a rhythm. And this rhythm is the same as the heavens, the seasons, the phases of the moon, the harvests. Everything is guided by celestial movements. Thus, when Jesus talks about seeds falling by the wayside, he is not only describing the soil, but perhaps pointing to astrological houses, moments of energy dispersion, or human archetypes. Interestingly, this symbolic language has always been present in the Hebrew tradition. The Psalms, the Proverbs, and even the prophets used astral images and cosmic metaphors to convey divine messages. The Book of Job, one of the oldest in the scriptures, already mentioned constellations such as Orion and the Pleiades. And in the apocryphal texts, like the Book of Enoch, the stars are described as angels on a mission, fulfilling divine orders. The sky was read like a large rotating manuscript, with visible messages for those who knew how to observe. Jesus, being a master of the Davidic lineage, son of a tradition of prophets and anointed ones, certainly came into contact with this wisdom. More than that, he seemed to master it expertly. His encounters with the Pharisees show someone who deeply knew the Torah, but also transcended its boundaries. He communicated with a vocabulary that resonated in both simple hearts and the trained ears of the initiated. The "he who has ears to hear, let him hear," repeated so many times, was not an invitation, but a warning. There was something more there, beyond the literal. The figure of the Eastern Magi, which appears only in the Gospel of Matthew, already gives us a clue to this hidden knowledge. They were not kings, as popular tradition painted them. They were astrologers, scholars of the heavens, likely from the Chaldean or Persian school. They followed a star. But what kind of star? A comet, a conjunction, a supernova? It doesn't matter exactly which. What matters is the principle. The sky announced the birth of a new consciousness, and only those who knew how to read the signs could find it. This reinforces the idea that Jesus came not just as an earthly teacher, but as a cosmic event. There is still a fascinating detail. In Jesus' time, the Hebrew calendar was lunar, but the festivals and rituals were strongly linked to solar positions and celestial events. Easter, for example, occurs on the first full moon after the spring equinox. The Feast of Pentecost, 50 days later, also aligns with the solar cycle. Coincidence? Unlikely. This suggests that the spirituality of that time, and the tradition from which Jesus comes, was intimately connected with the rhythms of the universe. Thus, when Jesus teaches about the kingdom of heaven, he might not be talking about an ethereal location, separate from earth, but about a state of consciousness that aligns with the heavens, literally. The famous phrase, "on earth as it is in heaven," found in the Lord's Prayer, can be understood as a hermetic key. The micro reflects the macro. The human being mirrors the cosmos. The kingdom of God is within us because we too are made of stardust. The elements that compose our body came from supernovas. The sky is within us. So, parables would function as veils that conceal and reveal, like layers of living knowledge. For the simple people, they offered hope and morals. For the initiated, they offered codes, roots, and maps to the soul. A good example of this is in the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were prepared with oil in their lamps. 5 were not. This can be read as a moral warning about spiritual vigilance. But what if it is also a metaphor for the inner illumination that depends on the conjunction between soul, virgin, and light, solar oil? Time and preparation would be internal rhythms that align with external cycles. At the same time, this view does not diminish the spiritual importance of Jesus. Quite the contrary. It enhances it. It inserts him into a universal network of solar masters, linking him to the traditions of Egypt, India, and Mesopotamia. Jesus would not only be the Christ of one religion, but a symbol of an embodied cosmic intelligence, an avatar who came not only to redeem, but to remind, to reconnect us with the lost language of the heavens. As we delve into this hypothesis throughout the next sections, more and more details emerge from the scriptures and the Christian esoteric tradition. The heaven, which has always been above us, might have also been in the texts, in the stories, in the lines between. And Jesus, the master of parables, would be the supreme translator of this universal language. Imagine for a moment that the 12 apostles of Jesus were not chosen randomly. What if each of them represented a specific archetypal energy, an aspect of human behavior, and more deeply, a zodiac sign? The esoteric tradition suggests exactly this. The number 12 is not just a coincidence or a narrative convention. It carries a symbolism that crosses cultures, religions, and spiritual systems. 12 are the months of the year. 12 are the zodiac signs. 12 are the tribes of Israel. And at the center of these 12, always, there is a central figure, the Son, the Christ, the center of the wheel. When exploring this relationship, it's possible to notice how the zodiac, far from being a modern invention linked to simplified horoscopes, was understood by ancient cultures as a mirror of the soul's inner processes. And the Bible, contrary to what many think, is full of subtle astrological references. The very word zodiac comes from the Greek zodiakos, which means circle of animals, referring to the constellations that form this symbolic wheel around the earth. These constellations were seen as representations of spiritual forces that shape the world and the human being. Around Jesus, each apostle has characteristics that, according to occultist traditions and symbolic interpretations, align with the zodiac signs. Peter, the impetuous, firm as a rock, is related to Aries, the pioneer. John, the loving and intuitive, with Pisces. Judas, the traitor, often associated with the duality and shadows of Gemini. This correspondence should not be read literally, but symbolically, like a hidden code woven into the Gospels to convey higher truths through the language of the sky. This symbolism also extends to the cross, not only as an instrument of execution, but as a cosmic structure. The cross is a geometric figure representing the 4 cardinal points, the 4 seasons of the year, and the 4 elements. It appears in various cultures, in the medicine wheel of North American natives, in Eastern mandalas, and even in Mayan pyramids. In astrology, the fixed cross is formed by 4 signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, the same ones that appear in Ezekiel's vision as the bull, Taurus, the lion, Leo, the eagle, transformed Scorpio, and the man, Aquarius. These beings appear again in the book of Revelation, around the divine throne. The connection between the apostles and the signs also leads us to the ancient division of the sky into 12 sectors. or astrological houses, each governing an aspect of human experience. Just as each house reveals a phase of the soul's journey, each apostle reflects a necessary learning on the path of awakening. The interactions between them in the Gospels can be seen as symbolic enactments of conflicts and harmonies between celestial archetypes. The Last Supper, for example, can be read as a grand embodied zodiac, where Christ, the Sun, is at the center, radiating consciousness. Furthermore, in the Dendera temple in Egypt, there is a stone-carved zodiac that dates back thousands of years before Christ. This celestial structure reveals how the ancients accurately knew the position of the stars and related them to the cycles of life. The same is true for Druidic and Vedic traditions. There isn't an ancient civilization that didn't map the skies. What does this tell us? That knowledge of the stars was considered essential for understanding the sacred, life, and the soul. In the Jewish context of the Second Temple, of which Jesus was a part, there were mystical currents such as the Essenes, who preserved cosmic wisdom. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain texts that speak about solar calendars, lunar cycles, and the role of the sons of light. Jesus, often associated with light and the sun, may have inherited this esoteric tradition. His metaphors about day and night, about the light that does not hide under a bushel, seem to be laden with astronomical meanings. It's interesting to note that early Christian iconography heavily utilized symbols of the zodiac. In the mosaics of Byzantine churches, it is common to see representations of the constellations surrounding the figure of Christ. This was not decorative, it was didactic and symbolic. Christ was seen as the Logos, the organizing principle of the cosmos, and the zodiac was the stage where this Logos manifested in matter. Medieval churches like Chartres are filled with astrological references in their structures and stained glass windows, educating the initiated through art and architecture. The cross, therefore, is not just a symbol of suffering. It is a symbol of balance, of intersection between the spiritual and the material, the temporal and the eternal. It is the point where heaven touches earth. And this aligns with Jesus' mission, to unite what was separated, to bring heaven to earth, to restore the celestial order in the human soul. He is described as the one who came to fulfill the law and the prophets, which can be interpreted as aligning earthly cycles with the celestial ones, to fulfill the divine rhythm. From this perspective, Jesus' journey can also be seen as a solar path, from birth in Bethlehem, which many associate with the winter solstice, to the crucifixion and resurrection at Easter, the time of the spring equinox. His path follows the sun's course through the zodiac. With each season, each phase, an aspect of Christ is revealed, just as the sun reveals different faces as time progresses. This association with the solar calendar is common in various solar traditions, such as that of Horus in Egypt and Mithra in Persia. In light of this, the Bible ceases to be merely a historical or moral text and also becomes an astronomical map, a celestial scripture that dialogues with the stars. Jesus, as an expression of the cosmic Christ, becomes a living symbol of the harmony between the human and the divine, between time and eternity, between the microcosm and the macrocosm. The 12 apostles, the cross, the signs, and the constellations are not there by chance. They are pieces of a grand cosmic chessboard where the game of the soul is played with celestial precision. From the dawn of civilizations, human beings have looked at the firmament not only with admiration, but with reverence. The sky was more than a starry roof over their heads. It was a sacred mirror that reflected the movements of life, soul, and spirit. In this context, the parables of Jesus, which have spanned millennia and still resonate today, reveal themselves as encoded star maps, designed to guide humans not only morally, but cosmically. If the sky is a book, the parables are its keys. The parable of the sower is one of the most well-known and frequently repeated in the Gospels. Jesus speaks of a man who sows his seeds, and each one falls on different types of ground. By the wayside, among stones, among thorns, and on good soil. Traditionally, it is interpreted as the receptivity of the human heart to the Word of God. But what if each type of soil also represents a sector of the sky, an astrological house, representing different fields of life? The seed would be consciousness, and the sower, the sunlight planting life through the constellations. The good soil would represent the alignment between sky and soul. A harvest of 30, 60, or 100-fold may refer not only to the ethical outcome, but to the cosmic harmony achieved. Another example is the parable of the wise and foolish virgins. 10 women are waiting for the groom, but only 5 bring enough oil in their lamps. Again, we see here a clear symbol of spiritual preparation. However, under the lens of celestial mysteries, this story can also illustrate the lunar cycle, the phases of the moon, and the soul's preparation for the energy portals that open at critical astrological moments. The absence of oil is not just carelessness, it's disconnection from the inner light, from the sacred fire that guides during the dark nights of the soul. In the parable of the Good Shepherd, Jesus describes himself as the one who leaves the 99 sheep to search for the one that was lost. The archetype of the shepherd is common in the Hebrew tradition, but it also appears in the firmament. The constellation of Aries, the ram, is a symbol of leadership, sacrifice, and care for the flock. The shepherd's journey is, in fact, the sun's journey across the skies, rescuing lost consciousnesses in the labyrinths of the ego. The lost sheep is the soul disconnected from the celestial axis, which needs to be led back to the cosmic order. The parabolic language of Jesus can be seen as a dialogue between celestial archetypes and human situations. The wheat and the tares, for example, grow together until the time of the harvest. Here, Jesus speaks of the coexistence of good and evil. But this image also appears in astrological cycles, where opposing forces manifest simultaneously: Saturn and Jupiter, Mars and Venus, light and shadow dancing in the same sky. The time of the harvest in this context would be the return of Saturn, the karmic cycles that demand discernment and purification. Another cosmic key appears in the parable of the barren fig tree. Jesus encounters a fruitless fig tree and curses it. The superficial reading might seem harsh, but in astral terms, the fig tree represents the time of fruition, the moments when the soul should blossom in connection with its mission. It's not the punishment of a plant, but the call not to waste the astrological windows that open in life. The fruitless tree is the being that, even nourished by celestial light, does not awaken. The parable of the hidden treasure and the pearl of great value also has cosmic parallels. The treasure buried in the field is the wisdom that lies in the astrological house of the soul, waiting to be discovered. The rare pearl is the Christ consciousness, which is only found by those willing to abandon everything, including the ego and earthly illusions, to dive into the abyss of the unconscious, where the archetypal mysteries of the zodiac reside. These images are not mere illustrations, they are clues. And there is also the parable of the faithful servant and the unfaithful servant. This speaks of spiritual responsibility, but also of synchronicity with higher rhythms. The servants represent signs, internal functions of the psyche, which must be attentive to the arrival of the Lord, the Son, the Spirit, the moment of alignment. To be found awake is to be vibrating in harmony with the planetary energies that govern incarnation. To sleep is to disconnect from the sky, to lose the thread of light that connects us to the origin. Within this interpretive key, parables reveal themselves as spiritual astrolabes. An astrolabe is an instrument used to map stars, measure angles, and navigate through oceans. The stories of Jesus fulfill this same role. They help the soul to orient itself in the sea of existence. And when connected with heaven, they function as mirrors, allowing each person to see where they are in their own cosmic journey. It's no coincidence that many parables talk about planting, growing, harvesting, light, lamps, stars, moons, cycles. These elements are part of the celestial vocabulary. Jesus not only used them, he encoded them. as if he knew that this wisdom would span the ages and find those who were ready to see beyond the literal. He spoke in layers, and the sky was the frame where everything fit. When we look at the scriptures with this new perspective, we are not denying Christian spirituality, we are deepening it. Religion at this point transforms into cosmic spirituality. Faith merges with wisdom, and parables become not just beautiful words, but astrological portals, fragments of the sky imprinted in symbolic language, waiting for those with ears to hear and eyes to see. Long before the birth of Jesus, entire civilizations were already looking to the skies as if they were the pages of a sacred book. In Mesopotamia, the Chaldeans developed one of the most refined astrologies of antiquity. In Egypt, priests studied the cycles of the stars as a way to measure the soul and time. In India, the rishis left astrological records that still today astonish with their accuracy. In this vast and silent field of knowledge, the mysterious Magi from the East emerge, who appear briefly in the Gospel of Matthew, but whose presence carries an immense symbolic weight. These Magi were not kings, as later tradition popularized. The word magus derives from the Persian term magish, which designated priests of the Zoroastrian religion, scholars of the stars, elements, and soul. They were masters of the stars, guardians of wisdom that blended astronomy, spirituality, and alchemy. Their role in Jesus' birth is not decorative. It's decisive. It was they, not the Jews, who recognized in the sky the sign that something extraordinary had happened on earth. They did not need angels or scriptures. The sky was enough for them. The famous Star of Bethlehem that guided them has been a subject of study, fascination, and speculation for centuries. Could it have been a comet, a planetary conjunction, a supernova? Of all the hypotheses, the most likely and significant is the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn in the sign of Pisces, which occurred around 7 BC. This specific conjunction was seen by the ancients as the birth of a new era, a transition between ages, especially when it occurred in the sign of Pisces, a symbol of spirituality, sacrifice, and transcendence. Not coincidentally, the fish would later become one of the earliest symbols of Christianity. The magicians, upon seeing this conjunction, did not just identify a celestial phenomenon. They understood the spiritual significance of that event. They knew that someone was being born there who would alter the course of human history. The sky spoke to them because they understood the language of the cosmos, and this understanding set them in motion. From distant lands, they traveled with symbolic gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which represent not only riches, but 3 states of the human soul: royalty, devotion, and transmutation. Gold represents the king, sunlight, inner power. Incense symbolizes the priest, the connection with the divine, spiritual elevation. Myrrh, used in embalming, speaks of death and rebirth, the path of the initiate. These gifts were not chosen at random. They were alchemical keys, forms of spiritual recognition. The Magi were not simply honoring a newborn. They were recognizing a solar avatar, a master who embodied the celestial cycles of life, death, and resurrection. The journey of the Magi is also a metaphor. They follow a star, that is, they follow the spirit, the call of the soul, the light that guides even in the darkness. They depart from the east, the land of the rising sun, symbol of awakening, and walk towards the west, where the sun sets, symbol of matter. The birth of Jesus therefore marks not only a historical event, but the birth of Christ consciousness in humanity. A new era begins there, a new astral cycle. The Magi, upon seeing the child, kneel. This is extraordinary. Great men of knowledge bow before a child. Why? Because there, in that frail body, they recognize the incarnation of the Logos, the Word, the cosmic intelligence that governs the heavens. Jesus had not yet spoken, healed, performed miracles, but he already radiated a light that those wise men knew to recognize. It was as if the constellations had descended to Earth in human form. This event also leads us to the idea that every birth is celestial. Each human being carries with them the imprint of the sky at the moment they are born, the birth chart. The Magi knew this. They not only predicted the birth of Jesus, but they knew what he symbolized within sacred astrology: the return of light, the arrival of the Messiah as the one who aligns the axis of the world with the upper sky. In astrological terms, the arrival of Jesus represents the beginning of the age of Pisces and the end of the age of Aries, marked by the sacrifice of the Lamb and the war of the empires. With Jesus, the fish replaces the lamb. Compassion replaces the law. The water of baptism replaces the blood of the altar. It is the transition of a planetary vibration, and the Magi knew this. They didn't just come to witness, they came to attest, seal, deliver to the world the confirmation that the heavens had spoken, and the heavens do not fail. The birth of Jesus was written in the stars, and only those who knew how to read this stellar alphabet could see it. The symbolism of the star is recurring in all initiatory traditions. The five-pointed star represents the enlightened human being, the five senses transfigured by the soul. The six-pointed star, the hexagram, unites heaven and earth, the descending triangle and the ascending triangle, as above, so below. And the Star of Bethlehem, as a visible phenomenon, is the symbol of the convergence between heaven and earth, between spirit and matter. It emerges as an intersection point between two worlds. Within the hidden spirituality, magicians are seen as archetypal guides of the soul. They represent the ancient knowledge that recognizes the light of the new. They are the ones who keep the flame of ancestral wisdom alive. They are the ones who, even outside of the people of Israel, can see Christ. Because Christ does not belong to a nation, but to a planetary consciousness. They represent the eternal East, the knowledge that has not been corrupted, that has not been lost, the knowledge that still knows how to listen to the heavens. Finally, this story invites us to reflect. Are we paying attention to our own stars? Are we following the signs that the universe gives us? Or are we distracted by the noise of the world? The Magi teach us that true knowledge moves us, that ancient wisdom is still alive, and that those who have eyes for the skies will also find Christ, not only outside, but within themselves. The birth of Jesus on December 25th was never just a symbolic date chosen for historical convenience. It carries a cosmic weight, an alignment with a universal phenomenon that marks the rebirth of light, the winter solstice. On this day, the sun reaches the lowest point on the horizon, seemingly remaining still for 3 days before beginning to ascend again. A phenomenon that, to the ancients, represented the death and rebirth of light, the triumph of life over darkness. And it is precisely at this point in the solar cycle that Jesus is born, not by chance, but by archetypal design. Just as the sun descends into darkness only to be reborn, Jesus descends into matter, lives among men, faces death, and resurrects. Christ's journey echoes the solar cycle. That's why he is called the light of the world, the Son of Righteousness, titles that resonate far beyond the literal. They are descriptions of his archetypal function. In various cultures, the sun was represented by savior gods who died and were reborn. Horus in Egypt, Mithra in Persia, Krishna in India, Dionysus in Greece. All of them, to some extent, shared the narrative of miraculous birth, sacrifice, and rebirth, and all associated with the movements of the sun across the sky. This repetition of archetypes does not invalidate the originality of Jesus. On the contrary, it strengthens his universality. Christ is not just a historical figure, but a cosmic model of spiritual evolution. He is the archetype of the inner sun, the fire that burns within the human heart, waiting to be recognized. When Jesus says, "I am the light of the world," he is not just describing his mission, he is revealing his nature, that of a solar avatar who descends to illuminate the darkness of ignorance. The solar symbolism extends throughout your life. The 12 apostles revolve around you just like the 12 signs around the sun. Each one represents an aspect of the psyche, a zodiacal quality. Jesus heals, feeds, guides, and awakens, just as the sun nurtures, warms, directs, and promotes growth. His triumphant entry into Jerusalem occurs when the sun enters Aries, the sign of renewal and leadership. His crucifixion, around the spring equinox, marks the exact moment when light and darkness balance, and soon light prevails. More than that, the very symbolism of the cross upon which we have already reflected is also a solar figure. The cross represents the 4 cardinal points, the 4 seasons of the year, the 4 evangelists. It is the celestial geometry of manifestation. The crucified Christ between 2 thieves reflects the sun between the 2 polarities, light and shadow, day and night, life and death. At the center of the cross, he is the immovable point, the axis of the world, the sun that sustains everything. The baptism of Jesus by John the Baptist, in turn, takes place in the Jordan River, a symbol of the waters of life, of emotions, and of the unconscious. It is the moment when the sun dives into the waters, beginning its symbolic journey through the astrological houses of the soul. And when Jesus emerges, the heavens open, and a dove descends, a representation of the Spirit. This narrative reflects an alchemical process. The sun plunges into matter, purifies itself, aligns with the Spirit, and then ascends. This is the same movement of solar initiations in the mystery schools of Egypt and Greece. Another revealing detail is that Jesus begins his mission at 30 years old, the symbolic age of Saturn's return, a planet associated with spiritual maturity and life's mission. Saturn is the lord of time, and at 30 the soul is ready to undertake its solar task. And then, for 3 years, echoing the 3 days the sun stands still at the solstice, Jesus travels the earth, radiating his light, healing, awakening, calling to consciousness. At the end of this cycle, he surrenders to sacrifice, just as the sun dies before being reborn stronger. But perhaps the most impressive is to realize that Jesus' words and actions have a solar frequency. He heals with the light of touch, transforms with the vibration of the word, illuminates with the fire of his gaze. He walks on water, a symbol of the sun reflected in the sea. He calms storms, just as the sun dissipates clouds. He transfigures himself into light before his disciples, revealing his truly radiant nature. He resurrects, not as a common physical return, but as a cosmic rebirth, the ultimate victory of light over death. The very symbolism of Christ goes beyond a proper name. Christ comes from the Greek Christos, which means anointed. In the East, the equivalent term would be avatar, a divine incarnation that descends to the world to restore harmony. Christ is the manifested Son, the incarnate Logos, the universal intelligence in human form. And this solar pattern is not exclusive to Christianity. It is a cosmic code that appears in initiatory cultures of all times. Esoteric astrology understands the sun as the central point of the astrological chart, where purpose, essence, the core of the being resides. When we live around the ego, we are like planets wandering without orbit. But when we recognize the inner Christ, we rediscover our sun. Therefore, Jesus' mission is also a call to inner centrality, to the awakening of the light that we all carry. As he said, "You are the light of the world." And here is the revelation. Christ is not outside, he is within. In this sense, Jesus as a solar avatar is not just a theological metaphor, it is a cosmic truth. He is the reflection in time of an eternal principle, the one who illuminates because he is light, the one who warms without burning, the one who awakens without forcing, the one who guides without commanding. He is the visible sun of the human soul, and all who follow him follow the path of solar awakening, to emerge from the night of unconsciousness, cross the valley of shadow, and be born again in full light. Throughout the Gospels, The miracles of Jesus emerge as intersections between the divine and the earthly. He heals the sick, walks on water, multiplies loaves, transforms elements, and resurrects the dead. But what if these events, far from being just isolated actions of a being with supernatural powers, were cosmic expressions, occurrences in sync with invisible celestial forces, recorded in the heavens through planetary alignments and zodiacal symbolism? From ancient times, the great initiates knew that true magic did not violate natural laws. It deeply understood them and acted in harmony with the cosmos. Jesus, as a solar avatar and knower of the astral mysteries, not only performed miracles, he manifested divine synchronicities, opening portals of healing and transformation at astrologically opportune moments. Nothing was random. Each gesture, each miracle resonated with the great stellar clock. The first miracle of Jesus, the transformation of water into wine at the wedding of Cana, is not just symbolic. The wine, as an alchemical substance, represents the blood, the spirit, the joy of the freed soul. The water is the unconscious, the raw emotion, the untransmuted matter. This miracle occurs at a wedding, a symbol of the union of opposites, and reflects an astrological moment of conjunction. When the sun and moon align in harmony, opening portals of fusion between spirit and matter. It is the archetype of the age of Pisces, where the liquid, the sensitive, begins to hold the sacred. The multiplication of loaves and fishes is another miracle full of cosmic layers. Fish is the symbol of spiritual nourishment, compassion, and hidden abundance. The number 7, of baskets or loaves, often appears, resonating with the 7 classic planets of astrology and the 7 chakras of the human body. Here, the food is not just physical, it's energetic. It's the distribution of sunlight converted into substance, into nourishment for the soul. This miracle aligns with the sun transiting in water signs, when spirituality and surrender become fertile. The healing of the blind, deaf, and paralyzed in turn carries a profound archetypal symbolism. The blind cannot see the light. They are disconnected from the inner sun. The deaf cannot hear the harmony of the spheres. The paralyzed do not move to the rhythm of the cosmic dance. Jesus, by healing them, restores the flow of celestial energy within the physical body. These miracles are not just interventions, they are reconnections with heaven. Jesus acts as a restorer of the soul's astrological axis. He reorders the spiritual orbit of the being. The miracle of calming the storm reveals another cosmic dimension. The turbulent sea represents uncontrolled emotions, out-of-control lunar cycles, conflicting planetary energies. When Jesus says, "Be still, wind," he acts like the sun at its zenith, the consciousness that stabilizes vibrational fields. It's the mastery over elements, not as an imposition, but as a deep integration with the rhythms of nature. He is in total harmony with the heavens, and therefore, the heavens obey him. And what about the resurrection of Lazarus? One of the most impressive miracles, it occurs after 4 days of apparent death. 4 days, a symbol of the 4 elements, the 4 lunar phases, the 4 cardinal points. The name Lazarus comes from the Hebrew Elazar, which means God has helped. This miracle reflects a return of the soul to the central axis, a rebirth promoted by the solar touch of Christ. It's like a new internal solstice. The light penetrates the densest darkness and restores life. It's the same principle of the planetary cycles that return to the point of origin to start a new spiral. Exorcisms, in turn, are directly linked to critical astrological alignments. Many ancient traditions knew that certain positions of Mars, Saturn, and lunar eclipses could open portals to dense influences, what we call demons or impure spirits. Jesus, as a solar channel, expels these entities with authority because he vibrates in resonance with the higher fields. His inner light disintegrates what is out of order. Exorcism miracles are also acts of energetic realignment. Even the smallest details, like the woman who touches his cloak and is healed from a hemorrhage, resonate with esoteric wisdom. The cloak symbolizes the auric field. The woman represents the feminine, lunar, intuitive soul, wounded in her creativity. The touch is the connection with the solar healing vibration. Everything happens in silence without words, because the true miracle occurs outside of linear time. It's an astral resonance, a reactivated cosmic memory. Many scholars of the Gnostic and esoteric Christian tradition assert that Jesus had direct knowledge of the moon phases, the conjunctions, the planetary portals. He knew where to be, who to speak with, when to act. Nothing was improvised. Astrology, in this case, was not a superstition, but an applied spiritual science, a sacred language for navigating between worlds. The miracles, therefore, are like sign events, markers that heaven and earth meet at that moment, and reality bends before the higher truth. The resurrection itself, the pinnacle of Jesus' mission, takes place on a Sunday, the day of the sun, and it happens at dawn, when light breaks through the darkness. This is not a random choice, it's a cosmic revelation. The sun rises again, consciousness awakens, the spirit triumphs over the cycle of death. Jesus, as a solar avatar, completes his spiral. The entire sky participates in the miracle, and we, if we are attentive, can participate in it too, by tuning our rhythms to the celestial rhythms, connecting our soul to the vast star field that pulsates above and within us. In every miracle there is more than wonder. There is alignment. There is celestial order restored. There is divine synchrony between what is above and what vibrates within us. Christ's invitation is clear: co-create with me. The heavens still move. Miracles are still possible for those who recognize the signs. The image of the Last Supper is perhaps one of the most recognizable in all of Christian iconography. Immortalized in Leonardo da Vinci's painting, this biblical episode is not just a farewell account between master and disciples, but rather a metaphysical, archetypical, and celestial representation projected with symbolic precision. Surrounding Jesus are the 12 apostles, figures who, from an esoteric and astrological perspective, represent the 12 zodiac signs, each with their own characteristics and energies. And at the center of them all, like the sun that sustains the solar system, is He, Christ. The arrangement of the apostles, their gestures, expressions, and positions suggest more than a human gathering. Leonardo, initiated in the occult and alchemical traditions, knew this. He encoded in his work a clear astrological message. Each apostle seems to vibrate with a zodiacal archetype, and by understanding this, the Last Supper becomes not just a historical event, but a cosmic enactment. The Son, Jesus, surrounded by the 12 zodiacal energies, about to surrender to the cycle of the solar sacrifice. Pedro, for instance, impetuous and straightforward, represents Aries, the warrior. John, serene and intuitive, reflects Pisces, the compassionate one. Judas, divided and ambiguous, embodies Gemini, the duality, the messenger who can both reveal and betray. Such correlations were not made randomly. They resonate with the characteristics described in the scriptures. The Last Supper, then, is the gathering of all the zodiac forces, at a moment of preparation for the transfiguration of the solar Christ. The bread and wine, central elements of the ritual, also have profound astral connections. The bread, made from wheat, harvested under the heat of the sun, represents the solar body, the physical transmuted into spiritual nourishment. The wine, fruit of the fermented grape, symbol of alchemical transformation, is the blood of consciousness, the liquid that circulates emotions and contains the spiritual essence. By saying, "This is my body, this is my blood," Jesus is conveying a hidden truth. The sun offers itself to the earth. The spirit surrenders to matter, so that all may be reborn through cosmic alignment. The Last Supper table is rectangular, but the true symbolism behind it is circular. The 12 apostles arranged around it reflect the zodiac wheel. Each position represents an astrological house, an aspect of the human experience. The Last Supper is not just a dinner, it is an embodied zodiac. And at the center is Christ, symbol of the higher self, of the solar spark within every human being. The cross that will come later, with its 4 arms, is already anticipated there, in the sacred silence of that night. The Last Supper takes place during Passover, a Jewish festival linked to the spring equinox, a moment of balance between light and darkness. It's when the sun crosses the equatorial plane, marking the rebirth of light. Jesus, as a representative of the sun, is about to die to be resurrected, repeating once again the solar myth that permeates so many ancient cultures. His death coincides with the descent of the sun into the underworld, his resurrection with the triumphant return of light. The very concept of the Last Supper is symbolic. The zodiac cycle is always spinning. The end of one sign is the beginning of another. The death of a month is the birth of a new stage. Just as the sun is reborn every day and every year, so too is Christ reborn in the heart of the one who understands the mystery. The supper is not the end. It is the ritual preparation for the cyclical return of light, for the birth of a new consciousness. In Gnostic and Hermetic traditions, it is believed that this scene carries within it the codes of the great mandala of existence. The presence of the 12 is not just numerical, but vibrational. Each apostle represents an initiation, a step on the zodiacal ladder. As the soul passes through each sign, it learns a lesson, purifies an aspect, awakens a virtue. The Christ at the center is the synthesis point, the still center that keeps everything in harmony. He is not just the external master, he is the inner sun that awakens as the wheel turns. The betrayal of Judas, when viewed with symbolic eyes, gains a new nuance. The sign of Gemini, ruled by Mercury, is associated with communication, but also with ambiguity. Judas represents the shadow that exists within every cycle. He is the necessary agent for the sun to enter into darkness. Without the night, there is no dawn. Without the cross, there is no resurrection. Judas, in this aspect, is also part of the cycle, the force that drives transformation. His kiss is not just betrayal, it is an initiatory trigger. After the supper, Jesus walks to Gethsemane, a garden, the place where the soul encounters its greatest anguish, its dark night. But it is also the place where he accepts the cycle. Thy will be done. At this moment, the sun surrenders to the movement of the stars, allowing the wheel to turn, knowing that death is just one of the arcs of the cosmic mandala. Jesus' surrender is also an invitation to yield to the cosmic flow, to trust in the universal rhythm that moves everything with wisdom. The Last Supper, then, is much more than a symbolic dinner. It is the sacred dramatization of the zodiac, the celestial theater in flesh and bone, where each character embodies a force, a sign, a constellation of the soul. Jesus, as the solar Christ, is the center of this mandala. He absorbs, synthesizes, and transforms each zodiacal energy, revealing that the path to awakening involves the conscious integration of the 12 aspects of being. And like every truly spiritual ritual, the Last Supper leaves us with an eternal call. Are we seated at the table? Do we recognize within ourselves the 12 archetypes that Jesus integrated? Are we ready to drink from the chalice of transformation and die to be reborn like the rising sun? The Last Supper still takes place. Within us, every cycle, every breath. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus speaks in celestial metaphors. You are the light of the world. The kingdom of heaven is within you. No one lights a lamp and hides it under a bushel. These words echo more than moral wisdom. They contain vibrational codes. They are like verbal constellations, fragments of a sermon that transcends earth. A sermon that was not proclaimed only on the mountains, but also in the heavens, the Sermon of the Stars. Jesus did not speak by chance. His words had rhythm, frequency, creative power. He understood the vibrational language of the cosmos, the same one that the ancients called logos. At the beginning of the Gospel of John we read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." This word is not just a spoken word. It is the creative vibration that sustains galaxies, constellations, star systems, and the human heart itself. Jesus is the Word made flesh. He is the embodied solar vibration, translating the harmony of the universe into human words. Every teaching he offered was in perfect sync with celestial cycles. Not by chance, many of his most impactful speeches took place outdoors, under the starry sky, on mountains or by the sea, spaces where the soul connects with the infinite. The ancients knew that words spoken under certain constellations hold power. The sky is not neutral. It amplifies, guides, and conveys truth in layers that only the awakened heart understands. Let's take, for example, the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus declares, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." This is not just an ethical appeal. It is a code of vibrational alignment. The meek are those who do not resist the cosmic flow, who do not fight against the rhythms of the soul, but accept them. And for this reason, they inherit the earth. That is, they become one with creation, in unity with the physical and spiritual plane, aligned with the frequency of cosmic Gaia. The sermon is also an energetic reading of the human soul. In stating that the kingdom of heaven is within you, Jesus eliminates any separation between the divine and the human. The heaven he refers to is not in a distant place, but is reflected in our inner sky, the energy field of the soul, the microcosm. In Hermetic astrology, each human being carries within them a map of the sky, the birth chart. This map is like a personalized gospel, a celestial gospel that reveals the journey of the soul. Jesus invites us to recognize this inner heaven, the source of true enlightenment. The signs of the times about which he warns are also inscribed in the heavens. There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, he says. Ancient astrology taught exactly this, that the great cycles of humanity are preceded by significant celestial events, eclipses, conjunctions, retrogrades. Jesus was not predicting the end of the world, but announcing changes in eras, astral transitions that alter the collective vibration. It is the language of the heavens informing the earth about what is to come. The Lord's Prayer, recited for 2 millennia by billions of people, is a true cosmic mantra. On earth as it is in heaven is not just a plea, it's a universal law. What is above is reflected in what is below. This principle is the basis of astrology, alchemy, Hermeticism. Jesus taught in alignment with the laws of the universe, and that's why his words resonate in any time, culture, or language. He spoke the language of the soul, and the soul is made of the same substance as the stars. The concept of salvation also gains a new meaning under this perspective. Salvation is not just about escaping suffering or reaching a distant paradise. It's about returning to the cosmic axis, to the original alignment with the higher self, the inner sun. It's about ceasing to orbit around the ego and starting to revolve around the Christ within us. This is the true conversion, not moral, but vibrational. A return to the star field that generated us. Many spiritual masters speak of the importance of silence, and Jesus also valued deep silence. Before major decisions or miracles, he would retreat to secluded places. These moments of silence were attunements with the universe, practices of cosmic recalibration. Silence is the place where heaven speaks the loudest, and it is in this inner space that the Sermon of the Stars takes place. The words of Jesus emerge from this silence, not as human ideas, but as stellar frequencies. The mystical Christian tradition, like that of the Cathars, the Gnostics, and the early desert Christians, understood this cosmic Jesus. For them, Christ's words were not dogmas, but vibrational codes. The Bible was an initiatory map, and heaven the true temple. Their rituals were simple, but deeply connected to lunar cycles, solstices, equinoxes, dates that marked open energy portals between worlds. When we look at the Gospels with the eyes of the Spirit, we see that Jesus taught astrology without ever using the word. He spoke of the sun, the harvest, the winds, the moons, the stars, the weather. Everything in his language is filled with cosmic rhythms and symbols. He was the priest of a temple without walls, the universe. His pulpit was the firmament, his parables, moving constellations, and each disciple, a planet to be realigned. But perhaps the most profound revelation of the Sermon of the Stars is the recognition that we too are stars. We carry light, we influence, we orbit around truths. When we align ourselves with the inner Christ, when we listen to the stellar vibration of His words within us, we also become suns, capable of radiating consciousness, love, and wisdom. The final call is clear. Read the sky within you. Listen to the Sermon of the Stars that resonates with every heartbeat, because all of creation still listens to the one who one day taught under the stars and continues to teach within us. Throughout history, the book of Revelation has been interpreted with fear as an announcement of the end of the world, catastrophes, and condemnations. But in its deepest sense, this revelation, for that is the real meaning of the word apocalypsis, is not about destruction, but about unveiling. It is the awakening of a new consciousness, coded in the heavens, written in the stars, announced by the very cycles of the cosmos. And at the center of this revelation is the return of Christ, not as a man on a visible white horse to the physical eyes, but as a solar frequency, an internal call to align with the stellar order of the divine. When speaking of his return, Jesus declares, "And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." This image, often taken literally, takes on another dimension when we understand that the clouds of heaven are the subtle planes, the higher dimensions of being. The Son of Man is not just an external figure, but the Christic Sun, the collective higher self, emerging in awakening souls. The return of Christ, then, will not be an exclusive event, but a mass birth of solar consciousness within humanity. The Apocalypse describes signs in the sky, the woman clothed in sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars, the red dragon with 7 heads, the 4 horsemen. These images are deeply astral. The celestial woman can be seen as the Virgo constellation, and the event described has already been observed astrologically in the celestial alignment of 2017. The 12 stars are the zodiac. The moon under the feet represents emotional dominion. The woman is pregnant with light, ready to give birth to a new era, a new earth. The dragon represents ancient forces trying to prevent this birth. In archetypal astrology, it can be associated with the dragon's tail, the south node, a symbol of collective karmas that dissolve. The 7 heads can be seen as the 7 planetary shadows, the imbalances in Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, and other celestial bodies that, when unconscious, generate cycles of suffering. But the prophecy is clear. The dragon is defeated, and the child is born. In other words, light overcomes shadow, and new consciousness breaks through. The 4 horsemen, white, red, black, and yellow, represent the 4 elements, the 4 quadrants of global astrology. They ride in the skies as planetary cycles that, when manifested, bring both chaos and healing. The white horseman could be Venus, the restorative love; the red one, Mars, the war necessary for purification; the black one, Saturn, the scarcity that leads to maturity; and the yellow one, Mercury, the word that either hurts or liberates. Each one reveals parts of us that need to be transmuted for the new to manifest. Within the Christian esoteric tradition, The return of Christ coincides with the end of the age of Pisces and the beginning of the age of Aquarius. Pisces, which ruled the last 2,000 years, was the age of faith, sacrifice, and spiritual surrender. Aquarius brings awareness, collectivity, cosmic integration. It is the age of inner light, of connection with the heavens not through temples, but through the soul itself. The Christ who returns in Aquarius does not bring dogma. He brings vibrational wisdom, freedom, universal knowledge. The New Jerusalem described in Revelation, which descends from heaven with 12 gates and precious stones, is not a literal city. It is the collective body of light from awakened humanity. The 12 gates are the 12 signs transformed into virtues. The precious stones are the energy centers of the earth and the soul, purified and reactivated. This city is the manifestation of heaven on earth, the kingdom of God within and among us, and it emerges when the Christ consciousness establishes itself as the axis of humanity. Jesus also speaks of the coming of a Comforter, the Spirit of Truth, who will guide us to all truth. This Comforter can be interpreted as the celestial intelligence that awakens us to the codes of heaven. It is sacred astrology returning in its elevated form. It is the lost knowledge of the Magi, the Essenes, the Egyptians, and the seers of time, becoming accessible again to all those who look to the sky with an open heart. The Comforter is Christ himself in the form of active stellar wisdom. The apocalypse, far from being a threat, is the symbolic manual of planetary transition. It describes the collective alchemical process we are experiencing. The veils fall, the old powers dissolve, time accelerates, and the stars speak louder. The cycles of Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are the great conductors of this cosmic symphony. Modern astrology, in its spiritual version, already recognizes these alignments as marks of a new birth. We are living the apocalypse, not the end of the world, but the end of ignorance. In this scenario, the return of Christ will not be at a single geographical point, but in each heart that awakens to its solar nature. The apocalypse is also the blossoming of the inner sun. It is the vibrational ascension of those who, for centuries, walked in darkness and now see the light. Christ is returning, and he is returning within us. Each celestial synchrony, each eclipse, each conjunction is a whisper from the sky. Remember who you are. And we are made of stars. We carry atoms forged in supernovas. We bring the archetypes of the signs, the energies of the planets, the rhythms of the galaxy. We are sky that forgot it was sky. The return of Christ is the return of memory. When heaven and earth become one, Christ manifests, not as an external savior, but as the fire that burns in the center of each awakened being. And now that you have journeyed with me through this cosmic journey, from the stellar birth of Jesus to the revelation of the inner Christ, it's time for us to turn our gaze inward and ask ourselves, what codes of the sky do you feel vibrating within you? Have you ever had a moment in your life when you noticed such precise synchronicity that it seemed to be written in the stars? Comment below and share with us. Which part of this journey awakened something in you that was dormant? We want to hear from you. Here, all of us, the Brotherhood of the Mind Unfettered, manifest together. Your voice and your insight are part of this constellation. And if you felt this call resonate in your heart, then you are ready for the next step. Yes, the journey doesn't end here. Click now on the video that is appearing on your screen, The Brotherhood of Light, the secret knowledge of Jesus that history erased. In this next episode, we will reveal what has been kept hidden for centuries, the hidden lineage of masters, the silenced wisdom of the solar soul, and the eternal legacy of a knowledge that time could not erase. We'll meet